welcome to On Point. I'm Robin Rhys. Today we'll be talking about blogging and its effect on communication. What was once thought to be a passing trend has now turned into something that is scaring traditional print and broadcast journalists. To keep up, journalists are either going to have to go onto the web and embrace the blogging culture or face being left behind. Bloggers were at first not even considered real journalists, but now if you're going to be a journalist, you better be a blogger too. All right, thank you all for joining me. Today we have 3 different guests with me to help give us some perspective on the blogging world. My first guest is Dr. John Kephart III, Director of Forensics and Professor of Communications here at Cal State Northridge. Next to him is journalist Julia Scott, who is the creator of BargainBabe.com, a site where you can learn how to be a savvy spender. And finally, Ezra Shapiro. He was the West Coast bureau chief for Byte magazine when the Macintosh was introduced. He has since written for MacWeek, MacUser, InfoWorld, and others, picking up 5 awards for opinion writing along the way. Ezra currently teaches new media in the CSUN journalism department. Thank you all for joining me. All right, now blogging is a term that has been thrown around a lot. Everyone, hears about blogging, but what exactly is it? And Ezra, can you tell us where the term came from?
I just had to check the answer to this question on Wikipedia right before the show started, and the best answer seems to be that it was invented around 1997 or 1998 as a contraction of the word weblog, which had been used to refer to a personal diary, an online journal of some sort. So that's really where it started.
Now, Julia, do you think that blogs need to specialize in something or have a focus in order to be successful?
Definitely. Blogs are all about developing a mass niche audience, and they're great for that because you can write about something really specific and have a very targeted subject, and that way people who are interested in that particular thing will come right to you and they'll be a great match, and hopefully they'll come back and give you a lot of visits later on.
Wonderful. Now, Ezra, can you tell us a little bit about what's the difference between a blog and a website?
I don't know that there is one. A blog is usually thought to have a lot of first-person material and to be updated fairly regularly, but you could also find a lot of websites that are very close to that. So it's really in the eye of the beholder, or the eye of the creator, I think.
Now, Julia actually runs a site called BargainBabe.com, and your mission statement on the site says, "I want to help you become a savvy spender so you can take control of your finances and spend well." Now, in this economy, this is really a site that people are looking for, so I think you're going to have a lot of success, as you already do. I've seen your site many times. So would you consider your site a blog?
Definitely. My site is definitely a blog. I use blogging software, and just to add to Ezra's comment, I would say that the main difference between a blog and a website is that blogs are updated with the most information, with the most current and newest information at the top. So it's sort of a reverse publishing way of presenting the information. And like a lot of other websites, they'll have maybe many different areas where you can get the information, but a blog is usually sort of like one streamlined flow of information.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to start Bargain Babe?
Yeah, I had started a blog at the Los Angeles Daily News here in the Valley and had a lot of fun writing The Bargain Hunter, as it was called, and I wrote a weekly column based on the blog. And, I was really focused on Los Angeles because that's where the paper's based. But I felt because of the recession that there was really a lot of potential to help people across the country. And so I wanted to start my own blog that could be nationally in focus. So I try to find deals and strategies to help people save money that are really applicable across the country.
Can you tell us a little bit about, the difference between writing for a normal print publication versus writing for a blog?
Sure. That's a great question because there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences. In either format, you want to tell a really great story. You want to have really compelling information. You want to write concisely. You obviously don't want to bore your readers. Blogs, usually the posts are much shorter. As Ezra said, bloggers write much more frequently. You're constantly putting up information on your site, but maybe it's a few paragraphs as opposed to if you wrote a print story on something, it could be a few columns long. So there's, that's not to say that there's not blogs that don't have very long posts or that only post, once a week or once a month or something. There's some great blogs out there that do that as well. But generally you write a little bit shorter and a little bit quicker, and you'll link to other sites Normally in print, it's sort of forbidden to mention any competitor, but on blogs, the idea is that you're really kind of sharing information and that you want to produce the information or the content that only you can create, and then you link to the rest. So bloggers always say, do what you do best and link to the rest. Yes. Because you have to be so competitive on the internet. I mean, there's so many other places, for instance, where you could go for personal finance information like you can find on bargainbay.com. Right. So I link to the other sites if they have a great post up instead of trying to recreate that post myself. So.
Now you mentioned that the style is a lot shorter. Now, as far as shorter content goes, John, do you think that blogging is actually changing the way people communicate?
I don't know if it's changing the way that people communicate, but I do think, excuse me, it changes the way that people get their news and the way that they seek out information on the internet. Something that everyone's talked about so far is the way that people can communicate differently on their blogs, that there's a more personal style, that people will link to other forms of content. So instead of having a traditional website where someone has the content that they want you to look at all contained on that page, it creates a more interactive form of web browsing because you can jump from hyperlink to hyperlink in ways that you don't in a lot of traditional news or traditional websites.
Now, last time we spoke, you mentioned a word called snarking, or term rather. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it relates to blogging?
Snarking is kind of a caustic wit, a sarcastic approach to communicating things. And one of the distinctive features of a lot of blogs is that snarky nature, where in traditional journalism, one of the objectives is to be objective, to try to remove bias and remove yourself from the story and present just the facts. Bloggers aren't faced with that same limitation, that in fact one of the hallmarks of blogging is inserting that personal voice, that being snarky, that one of the blogs that I check out that's blog on Israeli politics earlier today, the headline was, latest J Street poll is slanted in particularly stupid and obnoxious ways. And trying to imagine that on the Washington Post just doesn't make sense. Right. It might say, latest poll has complaints of bias from its viewers or its readers, but when you get into weblogging, when you get that personal connection, it makes news more engaging. Some recent studies have said that people looking at online news have an attention span of anywhere from 9 to 60 seconds, which is approximately that of a fruit fly. So when we have things like snark or engaging content or here's my short little post, now let me link you to other things you might be interested in, it changes the way that we get news.
Thank you. Now, Ezra, you actually teach about blogging in your classes and how to create your own blog in the classroom. Why do you think it's an important skill to teach your students?
Well, at this point, my students are journalism students, and they are looking to go out into the world of media and establish careers for themselves. Every student who has come back to me in the past few years, having gone through the process of searching for jobs, says you must now have an internet presence of some sort. You have to have a blog or a website, a resume posted, a portfolio, because that's what potential employers are checking out before they even grant you an interview. So that's the primary motivation. It's also fun.
Yeah. Julia, would you agree with that, that it's an important skill for a new journalist to have?
Definitely. In the newsroom at the Daily News, everybody was learning how to blog, and that's actually why I started the blog, because I had blog envy. Everybody else had these great blogs, and I thought, I got to get some of the action, you know, and it's true, but it's also a great way for young journalists to maybe find a voice that, as you had said, is not quite appropriate for print. You can be a little bit more personal, a little bit more snarky, so you can develop ways of writing that really just aren't appropriate for print. So it is a great skill to have.
Ezra, when did you start teaching your students that they should blog? When did that come into the classroom?
4 years ago?
4 years ago?
5 years ago? It was a while. I mean, it was before many of the students were actually thinking about blogging or developing an online presence. So I think 5 years is probably about right.
So for someone who wants to get out there and start blogging, what would be a good way for a beginner?
There are many services available on the internet. One of the first was called Blogger. It's now owned by Google. WordPress.com is another place where you can start a blog for free, where they provide all the software and all you have to provide is content.
So, like you said, WordPress or Tumblr, those are actually free services.
At this point, yes.
But they also do have paid versions.